In this section of the OphthoSim video software learning, we will show you the portal side of things. So this is the Educators Portal. It allows the instructor to select a curriculum for their class and define their class, and allows them to set exams or quizzes delivered for a particular student or for a particular class. And as well, it gives the instructor the ability to monitor the progress of the class or the student and how they're doing with respect to content coverage and also examination purposes, and allows you to compare one student to another or one student to the class. So we will start with the login screen, which you see on the main screen now. So in this case, I will log in as a teacher. So each user will be given their own username and password. In this particular scenario, I'm just using as an example teacher generically. That's the username we're going to use. We'll type in the password. We'll submit. And this is the first screen that the instructor, in this case, fake teacher, and we're going to go through this fairly detailed. You will be given a separate URL to access once you purchase the program. This is a browser-based program, as already mentioned, and cloud-based, so it can be accessed anywhere there is an internet connection. And you use the back button of the browser to go back one page, and you use the OphthoSim logo to go back to the educator's home page. So you see when I hover over that, it says Return to Educator's Home. So that button is very useful in order to get back to the main menu. In this case, the main menu is empty because there's nothing in it, and we're going to create some content here in a second and show you how easy it is to do so. But let's cover the fake teacher button first. So on the top right, you'll see the fake teacher button. This has three particular choices. You could change your password. You can access the user manual from our OtoSim website, and you can log out. So those are the options that are available for the teacher. So now we'll get into how we're going to create a class and how we're going to create content, presentations, a quiz, and an exam, and then look at some metrics. So the first thing you'll see that the screen is empty because there's no classes. So how do you enter a class? Well, if you hover over the plus, you'll see what it says. It says Create New Class. So I'm going to create a new class. Let's call this class Test 1 or Test Class for simplicity. We'll add the class. So now you'll see what happens. So now this is my class I just added, Test Class. The number of students in that class is 0. These are the things that I'm going to do to this class. But let's create the class first. So if your student is registered in the system with your university or a sim center, then you will have the ability to add those particular students to your class. So in this icon here, Edit the Class, I'm going to edit the class and add one student, a fake student. So I'm going to click that. Here are the students. This is the student box here. So if I go over and I'm going to add a student, if I click on the Add Student button, a list will appear, and I'm going to select Fake Student and close the list. So I have one student in my class, and his name is Fake Student. I'm going to try to keep this simple for purposes of understanding the actual software. But you can select from the list I just showed you as many of those students that are registered under your institution. So I'm going to save the class. So now I have a test class. That's the name of the class. I have one student in that class. So now I'm going to select the curriculum for that particular class. So I click on the curriculum button. This shows me all everything that's available in the curriculum in the software package of the OphthoSim Mobile. So in this particular situation, I'm going to create one, a curriculum. So let's just call this week 1. So in week 1, I want you to do the introduction section. We'll leave it at that. Keep it simple. So then I'm going to save this. I'm going to call this week 1. Save the curriculum. There's week 1 curriculum now appears. Now, do I want to set the curriculum for the class now, or do I want to do it later? Let's set the curriculum for the class now. So then if I want to press the set or unset curriculum button, I can select the week 1 curriculum, and I can activate it for the class. A check mark appears. So that means that when fake student logs on to his OphthoSim mobile device, either through his PC or through their smartphone, they're going to see flags beside the curriculum that I want them as their instructor to view in week 1. So in this case, remember this because we're going to go back to the student version in a subsequent short video. It shows you that I've engaged these 4 aspects of the introduction in order for a week 1 curriculum. So I can now go back to the home page or use the back button. I'm going to go back to the home page. It's activated. So now let's go to presentations. I want to create a presentation for my class of 1. Okay, so these are some of the presentations that I've already put into the system. So I'm going to make a new one. Let's create a new presentation, the plus button. So this screen will pop out. Let's call it test presentation. Okay, I'm going to choose my slides for that. So let's use, in the content, let's use a normal eye. So let's use this normal eye. So we'll use that image. These are the annotations that come with this image as part of our library. I can create more if I want, and I will in 1 second for this particular presentation. So if I want to include some words with the slides, something for the student to read, I can look at what the content is for that slide that in our program, so I can select that. This is what's written about that, and I can use the standard copy and paste function that's available to that. I can go to the add edit text button, and I can right click and then left click and paste in there. So this now has pasted that text with this image, save the text. And now I go back to the annotations button. I want the student to identify the optic nerve, the optic cup, the fovea, and let's make our own. So I want to create new annotations. So let's create a new one. So let's create an annotation. What do I want to call it? Let's call it retinal arterial branch. Okay, in this case, there's lots of them, but I'm going to select one just to show you how this thing works. So retinal arterial branching. So I'm going to use an annotation, and I'm going to put this one right here. I selected a circle rather than a square. I can select a circle or a square. In this case, I'll select the circle, and I'll put my annotation in that area, and I can make it oblong. I can make it smaller, bigger. I can rotate it if I want to, use an entire section, or in this case, I'm just going to put it there. Okay, so that's the location of the retinal arterial branching that I want the student to identify. I'll save the annotation, and now it's saved and activated. And I can activate or deactivate any one of these. Okay, so that's what I've done for that. I've called it a test presentation. I'm just going to put one slide in for it, and then I'm going to save. If I wanted to add another slide, I would add it here and select another one, bring it over, and then I can modify these by rearranging them by using this button up here. And I can modify or rearrange these slides and in a different format. In this case, I'm just going to create one slide again for brevity. So I'm going to save the presentation. Would you like to enable the class right now? I'll say no for the time being, but if I was going to do this very quickly, I'd say yes, and then that would automatically enable the presentation for the people in my class. But in this case, I'm going to say no, so then I can show you how to activate it later. So I'm going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to look at presentations. And here's my test presentation that I just created. I can modify it again and work with it again if I want to. Or in this case, I'm going to enable it. So now I've enabled the test presentation for the class. So now let's go back to the home page. Let's look at quizzes. So in this particular section, there are no quizzes and no anatomical quizzes or exams. So let's create one. So same thing as what I did before. Create a new multiple choice quiz or exam. So let's do a quiz. Let's get a picture. Let's just take a normal again to make it easy. Okay, we'll type in something here. This is an example of question mark. And then I can type in my answers here. I can call this papilledema. Call this retinal detachment. Or I could say normal. Okay, this is a normal retina. I took it from a normal collection. So I can put in the correct answer is normal. So this is an example of normal. Okay, so then I'm going to call this week 1, just to make it easy. And I'm not going to call it an exam or a quiz. I'll just call it week 1. That's the name of this particular exercise. And save it. Okay, do I want to save it? Do I want to save week 1 as a quiz, an exam, or do I want to enable it? And how many seconds do I want the student to be able to answer that question in? So in this case, I'm going to call it a quiz. Okay, I'll call it a quiz. I'm going to leave it a quiz. I'm going to enable it for the class, and I'm going to give the student 30 seconds to answer that question. And then I'm going to save it. So now that has been activated. If I go back here, I'll see week 1 has been activated. If I click on it as a quiz for the class. Okay, so now let's create an anatomical exam. So let's take another example. Let's use a normal again. Keep it easy. Okay, in this case, these are the annotations that are available that are brought in with this particular image that I created. So I can use optic nerve in this case. All right, so now we'll call this week 1 exam. So we know what it is. Week 1 exam. So week 1 exam, 1 question, and in that particular question, I'm going to ask the student to identify the optic nerve. Okay, if I wanted to add another question, same thing applies here. Add a question, drag it over, and then, do whatever I want with it. So in this case, I'm going to save it. Okay, week 1 exam, optic nerve. I'm going to use it as an exam. I'm going to enable it for the class, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer that question. Okay, so that's done. Let's go back to the quiz and exam question to be sure it's there. So here's my quiz that I've created, a multiple choice 1, and this is my exam that I created. And I've activated it. All right, so we're good to go there. So now I'm going to go back, and what we're going to do is we're going to pause here. We're going to go back to the phone version, the mobile version, and we're going to log in as the fake student, and we're going to see what their interface looks like now. And to reiterate what we've done before we do that is we've set a curriculum for that student of week 1 that entails this introduction section. We've set a presentation, which is called test presentation for that particular student or class. we've engaged one quiz named Week 1, which was enabled for the class, and we've set one exam for the class, which we've enabled. Okay, so that's what we've done. So now we're going to pause, and then we'll come back to this in a minute or so. Okay, so now we've created some content on the portal side. Remember, we created one class and with one student in that class, and the student was the fake student, which we're going to activate now to see what happened on the fake student side of the program. So I'm going to open the program again. I'm going to log in as that fake student. Okay, and now we'll see what has happened here. Remember, we did a curriculum for the students. So you see now in the introduction section, there is a tag beside it. So that tells the student that my professor has created, or my instructor has created, something that I must view for the next class or for my requirements. So if I open that up, you'll see those are the 4 flags that I selected for the student to need to look at, using the control buttons, the history of ophthalmoscopy, normal anatomy, and examination principles. So those are the sections that I had tagged, as you recall, for the student. Okay, so now let's assume that the student's going to look at these things. We're going to look at them very quickly. Okay, 8 pages. We're going to go through them because this is what the professor wanted me to do. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go through the history. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do this section, and I'm going to do this section. So in all those sections, I've covered what the professor wanted me, my instructor wanted me to do. So now I'll go back, and you'll see that I've completed that section where my tags were. I want to do a little bit more to show that I'm a good student. So I'm going to go into the pathology section and read ahead a little bit. So I'm going to do some hypertensive work, do a few of these. I'm going to do one of these. Look at a couple of tumors and some miscellaneous stuff here. Okay, so now I've done a couple of things. We're going to go back. So I've done a few things in the pathology section, 11 out of 115. Now, if you look at the presentation bar, I've got a 1 there. So that means that my instructor has delivered a presentation to me, which I'll now look at. There it is, test presentation. I'll open it up. There's the text that I wanted the person to read in that presentation. And then there's some anatomical structures that I wanted them to hit away at and practice on. So that's the presentation. So I go home. So I've viewed the presentation. I look at my list there. Oh, I've got a quiz. So my instructor has given me a quiz. So if I look in the quiz section and under define quizzes, there's my week 1 quiz. Remember, this is a quiz, so I can take it as many times as I want. So I can look at the quiz. This is an example of, choose my answer. If I get the wrong answer, let's say papilledema, submit my answer. It's wrong. So retinal detachment, wrong. Normal, resubmit, correct. And you see the bars telling me how much time I have, 12 seconds left. 10 seconds, 9, it's counting down as it goes across the top of the screen. So that allows me to take the quiz. And if I go back out, the quiz is still there. I can take the quiz as many times as I want. So I can choose it again, submit, go back out as many times as I want. It's not going to disappear. It's a quiz. It's there to help me as a student and tell me what the right answers are. So let's get back out. And now I look at exams. There's an exam that the professor wants me to take. So let's go into the exam section. Now you'll see there's some instructions that I should read, and then I have a defined exam, week 1 exam. So remember that this is an exam. So I can only take it once. Once I run out of time, I won't be able to re-enter. The exam will disappear off the face of my device, and the instructor will be given my results. So let's take the exam. Let's go for week 1 exam. There it is. Find the optic nerve. Use this space to move the crosshairs onto the target. Once you think you have the correct spot, tap to submit your answer. You may submit your answer many times. I've got 19 seconds left, so it's find the optic nerve. So I'm going to go to the optic nerve here and tap. Okay, so I've submitted my answer. Let's wait for the time to run out. Time's gone. So I've run out of time. Quiz can no longer submit any responses. I get to the back button. Takes me back into the program. If I look now, the exams are down to 0. If I re-enter the exam category, it's now gone. So my exam has been taken. Okay, so to repeat what I've done here on the phone, okay, I've looked at the introduction section that the professor has asked me to do. I've done some other touring of the program. I've looked at the presentation. I looked at the quiz that the instructor set for me, and I've taken the exam. So now we're going to go back to the portal side and show what happened on the portal side. Going back to the portal side, because I delivered some content to my class, my test class, as you can see in my program, and to my one student in that class, the fake student. So the curriculum tagged module, those I created and presented. The presentations, the one presentation that I enabled, a test presentation. The quizzes and exams. So I had one quiz and one exam that they took. And let's see the results. So what happened? So the reports. This is the important part for the instructor now. I want to see how my class or my student made out. So reports section. Now I can look at content progress. What did my student actually do? So here's what the student did. So the top one is what the whole class did. This is what the fake student did. Remember, there's only one student in the class, so these are going to be the same. But if you look at it, the whole class, this is the important part here. So the total class, they completed 21% of the total content, but they did it in 13 seconds. That's how long they spent in the program. These are the sections that were done. The introductory section was done completely. Okay, remember this was also what I had asked the student to do. So now I can look at that and say, oh, at least the flags, the student did all the flags. Nothing of the other sections. Oh, this guy he was a little bit keener. So he went to the pathology section and he just danced around a little bit for a couple of seconds to view some different things. All right, so that gives me what the whole class did, and then the student is going to be the same because, like I say, there's only one thing. And then I can print it out to get a hard copy of the results. So that gives me a very powerful metric on the progress of my student, how much work and time was spent, how they did on their exam, and what they did, if they did what I had asked them to do. So that is the reports part. Now let's look at the exam. That was progress. Let's look at the exam, the one question exam. So that was the week 1 exam that was taken. Okay, so this is the whole class and this is the student. They're the same because there was only one student in the class. So the test class week 1 exam results are in. Question 1, there was one question. You can see when I hover over it, and the answer was correct. There was 0 incorrect and there was 0 unanswered. And if I want to see what the student did, it'll be the same thing, okay? You got 100%, the grade 100%, you got 1 out of 1 correct. Incorrect was 0 out of 1, and unanswered 0 out of 1. The question, if I want to view the question, this is what the question was. The question was to identify the optic nerve, and the answer was correct. So this gives me a very powerful tool to look at in a very granular way how the student did on their exam and how they compare it to the other students in their class as well. And I can print that out as well. So that concludes the quick tour of the software for the portal. And I'm sure that the instructors will have a great time in organizing content and quizzes and exams for their class and improve the overall results of their performance. So thank you again for buying our products, using them, and hopefully enjoying the process of learning.